What if I told you that the more you chase her, the further she'll run, but the moment you pull away, everything changes. You're hurt, you're confused, you're doing everything to win her back, but she keeps slipping further away. What if I told you the very thing that feels like giving up is exactly what makes her come back? Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's power, because when you stop giving her the attention she took for granted, she'll start craving what she thought she didn't need. The shift doesn't happen when you try harder, it happens when you disappear with purpose. Distance creates desire. When you control it, right now, you're standing at a crossroads. Keep clinging to someone who's slipping away, or become the version of you she can't stop thinking about. If you're ready to reclaim your value, hit the like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment below. I choose distance over desperation. Let's get into it. Number 1. The strength to say nothing. The moment she walked away, your instincts probably screamed, explain yourself, reach out, find closure. You wanted to make her understand what she meant. Maybe you even typed a long message only to backspace it all in silence. And now, that silence, it feels unbearable. It feels like defeat. But that's the illusion. Because in reality, silence is not weakness, it's command. Most men break the quiet because they can't bear the ambiguity. They want to control the outcome, soften the rejection, make her see their pain. But every time you reach out, you confirm her decision. You show her you're still under the spell. You become predictable, available. And in a world where power and presence are currency, availability without value becomes noise. Stoicism teaches us one of the most difficult truths. You cannot control another person's choice, but you can control your response to it. And silence, when rooted in self-respect, isn't passive. It's a statement. It says, I will not argue with what is. I will not chase what's choosing to walk away. That kind of silence is magnetic, because it refuses to plead. It holds its shape. It leaves space for her to feel the gravity of your absence. Think of it like walking out of a room quietly after being disrespected. No storming out, no last words, just presence, then absence. And that absence echoes louder than any monologue ever could. When you stay silent, she has no script to follow, no emotional cues to mirror, no reassurance that you're still circling around her like a satellite. She has to sit with the void you used to fill, and that space becomes uncomfortable. Not because you punished her, but because you no longer participate, and your non-participation forces her to reflect. Maybe not today, maybe not even next week, but the seed is planted. Your calm speaks volumes, and your stillness unsettles. This is not about pretending you don't care, it's about choosing not to perform your pain. It's about stepping back, not in retreat, but in reclaiming the only thing you still have control over, yourself. So, stay quiet. Let your actions become your answer. Let your life become the statement. And let her sit in the silence long enough to realize that you never needed to say a word to make an impact. If you've found your strength in stillness, leave your trace below. Silence isn't surrender, it's my decision to rise. Number 2. Where you place attention, you place power. There's a kind of hunger that lingers after she leaves, not for her presence, but for her attention. You find yourself checking if she's watched your story, revisiting her page, wondering what she's doing and with who. It feels harmless, just curiosity, you tell yourself, but that curiosity costs you something far more precious than you realize: your focus, your energy, your sovereignty. Attention is not neutral, it's currency. And the more you give it to someone who no longer gives to you, the more bankrupt you become. Every glance, every mental replay, every emotional echo is a small deposit into something that no longer serves you. You are financing her relevance with the one resource you can never get back: your present moment. The Stoics were clear: what you dwell on, you become. And if your thoughts orbit her, you begin to disappear from your own life, not physically, but spiritually. You give your attention to the past and expect the future to form itself. But life doesn't work that way. It only moves forward when you do. Imagine your attention as sunlight. If you keep shining it on soil that no longer bears fruit, nothing grows. Meanwhile, the fertile ground of your own potential sits in shadow, waiting for warmth. That's what happens when you spend your days scrolling her updates instead of sculpting your future. You're watering weeds while your garden withers. Pull that energy back, redirect it toward the version of you that doesn't rely on anyone's recognition. Focus it on learning, on building, on pushing your edges. The absence of her attention doesn't diminish you, unless you act like it does. And when you withdraw your attention, it creates a silence she didn't expect. A void where your energy used to be, a missing presence that makes her question what changed. Psychologically, this is where momentum begins. You stop reacting and start reclaiming. You don't need her to notice you. You need to become so focused on your own growth that her notice becomes irrelevant. That's when you start to rise, not just out of the breakup, but out of the version of you that once needed her gaze to feel seen. If you're done financing the past with the energy meant for your future, mark your clarity below. I no longer invest where my value isn't honored. Number 3. Emotional stillness sparks her uncertainty. She expected the breakdown, the flood of texts, the desperation wrapped in romantic language. She expected the same script she's seen play out before, when a man falls apart because she walked away. But this time, she's met with something unfamiliar. Silence, not just absence, but poise. You haven't begged. You haven't explained. You've simply disappeared with intention, and that's not indifference, it's control. Right now, she doesn't know what to make of it, because emotional control in the face of loss is rare. Most men crumble under the weight of rejection, allowing grief to turn into spectacle. But you've chosen a different path. You've chosen stillness. And in that stillness, a powerful message emerges. I feel, but I do not break. Stoicism teaches us not to reject emotion, but to master it. Feel the wave, but do not drown in it. Your pain is real, but it doesn't dictate your behavior. You don't need to prove your love through collapse. You don't need to respond to every silence with a signal flare. The most profound strength is the kind that doesn't announce itself. It just endures. Imagine yourself as a mountain in a storm. The wind howls, the rain beats down, and yet you remain. That's what your calm does. It unsettles her, not because you're playing games, but because she no longer has access to the emotional levers she once pulled. Her control over your response has dissolved. She no longer knows how you feel, or if you feel at all. That uncertainty creates friction, and friction creates curiosity. You become a mystery, not by trying to be one, but by refusing to be predictable. She's waiting for a crack, a signal, a slip, and all she gets is quiet strength. That quiet makes her question her assumptions. Why hasn't he reached out? Is he over me? Was I wrong about his need for me? And these questions, left unanswered, are what build obsession, not your effort, not your pain, your This isn't about manipulation. It's about recentering your power. Because when you no longer allow someone to read your emotions like an open book, you become something more than just another man heartbroken. You become a man she can't quite figure out. And that tension, that's where gravity begins. If you've chosen calm over chaos, drop your anchor in the comments below. My peace is louder than her absence. Number 4. Scarcity creates value. Presence destroys it. You used to be everywhere, always available, always ready with a reply, a plan, a compliment. You didn't even realize you were doing it, but you became easy, predictable, a constant presence in her world, like background noise she didn't have to work to hear. And in that familiarity, something unspoken happened. Your value began to fade, not because you lacked worth, but because you gave it away too freely. People don't value what is always there, they value what they have to reach for. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology did. They taught that everything in life gains meaning through its finiteness, and when it comes to relationships, emotional supply works the same way. When you are too abundant, too accessible, you become emotionally cheap, and no one cherishes what they can consume without effort. Right now, your withdrawal feels unnatural, like you're doing something wrong by not showing up, by not checking in, but what you're really doing is resetting the scales. You are no longer giving your attention like it's infinite. You're making it scarce, selective, earned. That scarcity is not a tactic, it's a truth. You've stopped leaking your presence into a space that no longer holds you. Think of value like oxygen. You only notice it when it's gone. When you were always available, she didn't need to appreciate your presence. It was constant. Now, she's breathing thinner air. She doesn't know why she keeps checking her phone, why your silence feels so loud. But that's the effect of scarcity. You've removed yourself from her emotional equation, and that subtraction is the beginning of her reflection. You are not doing this to provoke a reaction. You are doing it because your time, your energy, your emotional availability are not disposable. They are not for those who take them for granted. You step back not in punishment, but in principle. And the man who knows his worth does not offer it unconditionally to someone who walked away. Over time, this quiet exit changes everything. You no longer orbit her world. You become a memory she can't replace. Not because you begged to be remembered, but because you left space behind. Space that she must now sit with. Space that once held your presence and now holds only echoes. If you've chosen scarcity not to disappear, but to reassert your value, mark it here. I don't chase value, I become it through absence. Number 5. Mystery unsettles what comfort took for granted. She used to know where she stood with you. She could read every emotion in your words, every meaning between the lines, every sigh, every pause. You gave her everything, your thoughts, your fears, your feelings, laid bare like pages in an open journal. And in the beginning, that vulnerability felt honest, real. But over time, it became routine. She stopped wondering. She stopped leaning in. Because there was nothing left to discover. You see, predictability is the quiet death of attraction. When someone feels they know exactly how you'll react, exactly what you'll say, they stop paying attention. Their mind wanders, their curiosity fades. Not because you were unworthy, but because there was no mystery left to keep their imagination alive. The Stoics never advocated for secrecy, but they did teach the power of interior life. Marcus Aurelius spoke often of keeping your thoughts close, of not reacting impulsively to every wave that hits the shore of your mind. And that's what you're doing now. Not hiding who you are, but no longer broadcasting every flicker of your soul. You've turned inward, not to disappear, but to deepen. And that shift unsettles her, because now you've stopped playing the role she assigned you. You're no longer predictable, no longer always available for decoding. She doesn't know how you feel, doesn't know if you're hurting, doesn't know if you're waiting or moving on. You've become opaque, and in that uncertainty, a new kind of energy begins to grow, an energy she can't quite label. She checks your page, nothing new. She wonders if you're thinking of her, but there's no signal, no breadcrumb. You've disrupted her sense of control, and without control, comfort becomes restlessness. That restlessness becomes curiosity, and curiosity in time becomes desire. But none of this works if it's performative. If you pretend to be mysterious while still orbiting her in silence, she'll feel the hollowness. This isn't about games, it's about truth. You're no longer trying to be understood. You're simply choosing not to be read like a cheap novel. You're living, building, becoming, and she has no window into that process anymore. When you stop explaining yourself, you give her only one option: wonder. And wonder, when unanswered, becomes memory, the kind that lingers. If you've traded clarity for quiet strength, share your presence with this. She doesn't need to understand me. My silence says enough. Number 6. Self-discipline is the door out of suffering. There's a moment after loss when the silence wraps itself around you. The world keeps moving, but you don't. You wake up slower, you sleep later, you scroll longer. Her name still lives in the pauses of your day, and somewhere deep inside you start telling yourself that feeling this way is part of the process, that your pain is proof that you loved deeply. But pain, when left unchallenged, becomes indulgence, and indulgence becomes identity. You are not here to suffer endlessly. The Stoics never worshipped pain. They respected it only when it served as a forge, when it burned away the softness and revealed the steel underneath. You can cry, you can ache, but you cannot stay there, because the longer you cradle your suffering, the more it shapes you into something passive, something small. Right now, every ounce of energy you give to your grief is energy you are not using to rebuild. You tell yourself you're not ready to move, but readiness isn't a feeling, it's a discipline. You don't wait for clarity to act. You act, and clarity finds you. That is the Stoic path, not suppression, not avoidance, action. Go to the gym, even if your body feels like stone. Read something that challenges your mind, even when it feels heavy. Sit with discomfort without trying to numb it through distractions. Every day you move forward, you're teaching your nervous system a new pattern. I don't wait for motivation. I lead with intention. She's no longer watching. And that's good, because the progress you're building now isn't a performance, it's permanent. It's the foundation of a life she no longer has access to. And if one day she does look again, she won't see the man who collapsed when she left. She'll see someone reborn, not in spite of the pain, but because of what he did with it. That is the quiet revenge of growth, not the version that posts success for validation, but the version that doesn't need to say anything at all. Your transformation becomes the closing chapter to a story you no longer have to rewrite. If you've chosen action over anguish, discipline over delay, mark your step forward. I move through pain, not around it. Number 7. Her absence is the lesson. Let her feel it. There's a part of you that still lingers, maybe not in messages but in the shadows, watching her stories, hovering over old photos, hoping she notices that you're still noticing. It's subtle, harmless, you think, but even silence can be diluted if you remain present in quiet ways. And the truth is, as long as she can feel you orbiting her, she won't feel the weight of your absence. Letting go isn't just about what you say or don't say. It's about what you allow her to experience in your complete withdrawal. You cannot create longing if you still leave breadcrumbs, and every view, every digital trace reminds her that you're still there, even if you're not speaking. That comfort dulls the impact. It keeps her from sitting with the full consequence of what she walked away from. The Stoics were clear about detachment. To release something, you must stop feeding it. You can't heal while monitoring her moves. You can't rise while remaining emotionally available to someone who made you optional. True absence isn't passive. It's a choice. A declaration that your attention is no longer free and your energy is no longer accessible to those who discarded it. Right now, your presence is still doing a kind of emotional labor. It cushions her guilt, softens the edge of separation, makes her feel like if she changed her mind, you'd still be there. But you're not, or at least you shouldn't be, because the man who values himself doesn't wait in the wings, he exits completely and lets the silence speak for him. Think of your absence like gravity. It doesn't announce itself. It pulls, subtly, quietly, until its presence is undeniable. But gravity only works when it's consistent. If you go dark, then reappear in small ways, you create noise where there should be contrast. You weaken the lesson your silence is meant to teach. Let her sit in it. Let her remember what your presence once felt like, not because you remind her, but because nothing else matches it. Let her hear the quiet where your voice used to be. Let her scroll and find nothing. Let her reach and feel air. Not to punish, but to close the loop, to give her the chance to realize, not through confrontation, but through emptiness, what she let go. If you've decided to let your silence be complete, say it clearly. I leave no echoes. I leave space to be remembered. Number 8. Real power is refusing to chase. There's a quiet desperation that hides behind every attempt to win her back. It dresses itself in dignity. Phrases like, "I just want closure," or "I need her to understand." But underneath, it's fear. The fear of letting go. The fear that if you don't fight for her, she'll forget you. So you keep the door half open, even if she's long walked through it. But here's the Stoic truth. No one truly returns to someone who has not yet left the door behind. If you want her to see your worth, you must stop offering it. If you want to be respected, you must stop negotiating for attention. Real power is not in pursuit, it's in the refusal to chase. You don't need to explain yourself again. You don't need to show her how much you've changed. Because every time you try to prove your value to someone who let it go, you quietly declare that you doubt it yourself. And that doubt shows in every action, every message, every silent hope you carry. Stoicism teaches us to act from principle, not from emotion. You feel the pull. That's natural. You want to bridge the silence to make things right. But ask yourself, is this truly for you or for her validation? Are you moving toward closure, or are you afraid of starting over without the idea of her lingering beside you? Refusing to chase doesn't mean you've stopped caring. It means you've chosen clarity over illusion. You've chosen to step off the battlefield, even if she still holds the sword. It's not surrender, it's transcendence. You rise above the need to be chosen, because you've already chosen yourself. Imagine what it looks like to simply disappear, not as an act of war, but of peace. To stop seeking signs, stop checking for a change in her tone, stop hoping she'll come to her senses. That's not coldness, that's discipline. That's remembering your worth isn't determined by her recognition. It's rooted in your refusal to abandon yourself in pursuit of someone who walked away. And if she does come back, it should never be because you chased. It should be because you didn't. Because your absence became louder than any plea. Because your silence created the contrast her comfort never did. If you've chosen stillness over struggle, strength over proving, leave your trace here. I never beg to be seen. I become unforgettable by walking away. Number 9. The quietest revenge is becoming untouchable. You've imagined it more than once, that moment when she sees you again, maybe on social media, maybe by chance, and she stops. Not because you said something, not because you tried, but because what you've become is undeniable. Not louder, just more. More focused, more refined, more centered, the kind of man she never expected to emerge from the ashes of what she left behind. But here's the thing, this vision isn't about her, not really. It's about you finally reclaiming the power you gave away. You spent so much time trying to be seen by her, understood by her, loved by her, that you forgot to become undeniable on your own terms. And now, your silence isn't emptiness, it's incubation. The Stoics never preached revenge, they preached refinement. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." You don't need to prove anything to her. You need to prove everything to the man in the mirror. Not out of bitterness, but out of honor. Every workout, every early morning, every hour spent building something she'll never see. That's the real revenge, not because she'll envy it, but because you no longer need her to. That's the break. That's the shift. You've stopped living to be remembered and started living in such a way that forgetting you becomes impossible. There's a silence in that strength. You don't post updates for effect. You don't drop hints. You just move forward, upward, inward. And while she may feel curiosity, even regret, none of that fuels you anymore. You've become the man she only thought she knew. The one who loved deeply, yes, but who loved himself more once the storm passed. You're not chasing recognition. You're becoming the version of yourself that makes everything she walked away from feel like a miscalculation, not because you sought to hurt her, but because your glow returned in the one place she no longer has access to. And that, in the end, is the sharpest blade. Indifference forged in effort, presence built in solitude, value reinforced in silence. She left you one version of yourself, and now she'll never get access to the one you've become. If you're building a life that doesn't beg to be seen, just lived fully, speak it here. I rise quietly, and that's what makes her notice. Number 10, you were the prize she just forgot. There was a time when you believed her presence validated you, that her staying meant you were enough, and her leaving meant you weren't. And in that belief, you gave her the power to define your worth. But here's what you missed. Your value was never based on her ability to recognize it. Her presence didn't make you worthy, and her absence doesn't make you less. You were the prize all along, but like most men who feel deeply, you traded that truth for attachment. You started proving instead of simply being, explaining instead of walking, pleading instead of pausing. You mistook being chosen for being worthy, and now in her absence, you're beginning to see what was there the whole time. You didn't lose her. She lost access to a man she didn't fully understand. The Stoics would say that virtue is its own reward, that a man who lives with integrity, with discipline, with inner peace, doesn't need outside validation to feel whole. You don't need her to tell you what you're worth. You need only to live in alignment with the truth that your presence is not something to be negotiated, it's something to be earned. And maybe she'll see it, one day, in the way you move, in the way you no longer hesitate, in the way your name begins to carry weight where it once carried longing. But whether she does or doesn't isn't the point. Because your evolution isn't about her anymore. It's about you realizing that the man who's built through heartbreak becomes something more unshakable than before. You're no longer trying to be unforgettable. You simply are, because you stopped performing for love and started living from strength. The kind of strength that doesn't need applause, that doesn't need her to look back, that doesn't collapse when someone else walks away. She'll remember, not because you left breadcrumbs, but because there's no substitute for presence. And when someone once tasted your depth, no imitation will ever satisfy. That's the difference between being wanted and being missed. So walk forward, not to prove, not to win, but because this is who you are now. The man who doesn't wait to be crowned by anyone else. The man who remembers his own value, even when others forget. If you've stopped chasing approval and started owning your worth, speak this truth into the silence. I've always been the prize. I just stopped needing her to know it. You began this thinking the more you gave, the more she'd return, but now you've seen the truth. Stepping back didn't make you weaker, it made you magnetic. She didn't become obsessed because you vanished. She became obsessed because you became unavailable, because you chose yourself. If you're ready to keep evolving, like this video, subscribe and comment. I am no longer chasing, I am becoming. Stay sharp, keep your distance. Let her chase what she once walked away from.